Okay, so yeah, you have been all over the province talking about the Alberta pension plan. I remember you were up here sometime in February or March. You were up here in Valley View, and that was really cool to kind of catch some of what you were saying to the residents here. Maybe you can give our audience, for those who may not know who you are or what your background is, what makes you kind of qualified to talk about this? Like, what do you do? You're a chartered investment manager. What does that mean exactly? Maybe you can elaborate for us.
Sure. So a lot of people know me politically because I did run in a couple of federal elections as well as for our provincial Senate and most recently for the UCP. So I've been politically active now for about 6 years or so. And prior to that, like many people, I just, really didn't like politics much and just sort of had to monitor it, follow it, and understand it because of course politics drives the economy and of course the economy drives investing. So as a chartered investment manager, I owned my own securities investment firm, and I did that from 2019 to 2010, so 9 years there, almost a full decade. I've worked in the business now for about 20 years, and that was what actually brought me to Alberta here. And I still continue to work with some of my high net worth clients just to help them develop what I would say very similar pension style investment and retirement planning process that I take them through, not unlike that of a Canada pension plan. So 20 years in the business and the last 10 years in owning my own investment securities firm directly. And of course, Canada Pension Plan, just like every other OAS and GIS and RSPs, TFSAs, these are all the same sort of platforms that are available to retirees that I work with on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully that gives some people some sense of my qualifications and my background to.
Awesome, appreciate that. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I just want to encourage you today to explain it to us like you're explaining it to a 5-year-old, because basically when you're dealing with me, that's what you're dealing with. Me have hard time wrapping brain around tough things. But I came to Alberta in late 2021. And of course, in 2022, the summer of 2022, when the UCP had their leadership race, that's when I started to kind of get involved in politics in Alberta. And that's when I first started hearing about something called the Alberta Pension Plan, this proposed pension plan, which was kind of on the table for some of the leadership candidates to get votes to their side, because they said this is one of the things that we're going to introduce. And for a lot of reasons, a lot of Albertans are pretty fancy with the idea. And for a lot of reasons, other Albertans don't think it's a great idea. So when you've gone to the different stops across the province to talk about this topic and to take people's questions, what are some of the common themes you hear around the province in terms of support and in terms of criticism for the Alberta pension plan?
Well, I think for a lot of people, there's some misconceptions around the Canada pension plan. Is probably the biggest thing that I've been facing. There seems to be this false sense of security and this false understanding of what it actually is and what it was meant to do. So I've been spending quite a bit of my time in the beginning just offering up, what is the Canada pension plan, and trying to get people to think about why should we stay with the Canada pension plan, because it's really easy to stay with what you know, and sometimes a little bit harder to accept something that's new and novel for people, not understanding the benefits that it could offer. But more importantly, I think it's more important for people to understand not only what they could gain with the Canada pension plan, but I personally see a lot of opportunity to mitigate a lot of risk by leaving the Canada pension plan. And so, I usually start my conversation with, what is the Canada pension plan? And, there's this myth that I think has been busted in the last few years around the Canada healthcare system. It used to be the best in the world. Remember that statement? And, I would say the Canada pension plan, I always tell people, is it possible that just like, Canada has the best healthcare system in the world, that's what we've been told, but is it necessarily true? And so getting people to think a little bit outside of the box and think about, why would we stay with the Canada Pension Plan? A lot of people just want to stay because it's what they know. There's a familiarity there with it. I did have one gentleman tell me that there was no risk with the Canada Pension Plan. And of course, there's a risk anything you do, especially investing. It doesn't matter whether it's an investment with the government or investment in the private sector. Every investment that you make is always going to come with certain risks. And, I usually start the conversation with, what is the CPP? Is it truly a pension plan, or is it something else? Because if you consider what the intention in 1966, when the Canada Pension Plan was started, its actual purpose was to reduce poverty. So that's a far cry from a retirement or a pension plan that you and I would establish, for ourselves, is hopefully we're going to live beyond the poverty line. But that was its purpose. So it's a social benefit program. And it is a pool of assets right now, because in 1997, they did make some changes to it that included the CPP investments, now used to be called formerly CPP IB, the investing board. And it's a pay-as-you-go system. So before 1997, there were no assets to speak of. It was a pay-as-you-go. What ended up happening was, an investor today or contributor today was paying for retirees, and then there was no assets to speak of. So it was, if you think about, I hate using the word a Ponzi scheme, but for lack of a better word, let's use that. A Ponzi scheme is when you take from somebody today that's invested and you give to the person who you paid out yesterday. Well, the government calls that a pay-as-you-go system. They're not the only pension plan that does that, but that's in essence what it is. And there's two pension plans right now. There's the base CPP, and then there's the enhanced CPP. The base CPP applies from $3,500 to $68,000 and $500. And then what happens is now they've had to add an additional CPP because they don't have enough money, enough contributions to continue to pay on this pay-as-you-go system, just with the base CPP. So they have this enhanced now that's going to apply from $68,500 to $73,200 this year, and that will go up next year to $78,000. So it's not what people think of as, I hear a lot about, don't touch my pension plan. Well, it's not your pension plan. It's actually a government-owned asset, and the government changes the rules as they see fit, like they did back in 97, and have proposed changes ever since to either increase contributions or reduce benefits. Why? Because they own it, they control it, and it's a benefit plan. The maximum contribution that you make in 2024 is $8,110, but the maximum benefit that you can receive is $1,364. Now, most people will never receive the maximum just because of the way it's calculated. And the average as of today that the average contributor to the Canada Pension Plan receives is $831.92. So
that's not a whole lot.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot. It's not something that you would, hopefully you're not relying on it for your retirement. And around the poverty reduction plan, it's really funny that they chose the Canada Pension Plan to justify its existence, because it would have made more sense to use the old age security, OAS, because if you've never contributed, let's say you've never worked, you've never contributed to the Canada Pension Plan, you're not eligible for it. So, the OAS, everybody is eligible. And so from a reduction of poverty perspective, it would have made a lot more sense to use the OAS as a tool to reduce poverty rather than the Canada Pension Plan.